Hey, this is Steve, and you are listening to the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast, a part of the BS Podcast Network. Enjoy the show.
In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cutillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Sunday. It is November 12th, and this is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Cutillo. I have with me one Stephen Marcus. What's going on, Steve?
What's going on, Kevin? How are you tonight? How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, great, wonderful.
Good.
My life is blissful. Everything about it is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're off to a good start. We were just talking before air, and I was getting a rare Kevin Cutillo apology.
Yeah, it's always a good day when you get an apology from me, isn't it?
Yeah, it's rare. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, and so, you know, it was just so nice to hear. So I appreciate that. And
so I will let everyone in on the apology. I did apologize to Steve, and for those of you who've been listening for a while, you know last year Steve struggled a little bit in our main league, the league that's brought us all together, the Falafel League. The original Falafel, because, you know, in case you're a new listener and don't know, it is a relegation league. So there are 3 tiers, and if you finish last, you go to the next tier down. And for those of us who are in the main league, it can be a really scary thought to go down, especially considering we're on the podcast and, you know, Steve started the league. So Steve was having a rough time with that last year, and I may have added to that dissatisfaction on occasion by rubbing it in his face a little bit. So this year, the tables have somewhat turned. I wouldn't say turned completely because you're still down at the bottom with.
Yeah, not out of the woods by any means.
In fact, I do have more points than you, but you do have a better record than I do. And yeah, it's tough. It's really tough knowing that you're down near the bottom. So,
hey, damn it, guys. I'm going to lose this week, too.
Well, no one cares about you. You're in first place, and then you'll lose in the playoffs.
I'm going to drop to 8-2.
Hey, Sal, how's it going? Sal Lito with us, of course.
Hey, since we're giving out apologies, I'd like to give out an apology too. Do we have time for that, Kevin?
Not really. I'd like to watch the Patriots game.
I want to say sorry to everyone who read my sink or swim this week, and where I put the Adam Thielen on the sink list. That was probably my biggest miss of the year, right there. Thielen.
That's a tough one. So. That's a tough one. He had a hell of a day, which of course we will get into as we go through all of the games. We're going to go through every single game. We're going to do something a little bit different today. It's kind of scary. Steve and I think, are very petrified about how this show is going to go, but we're going to let Sal actually run us through the games.
Whoa.
Well, first and foremost, Steve will attest that whenever Kevin's not here and we do a Sunday night show, I run through the games. So it's not like I'm an amateur here. Well, I'm an amateur, but anyway.
I think we're all amateurs. Let's be clear here.
Well, let's kick it off with the Green Bay Packers winning 23-16 over the Chicago Bears. In Chicago, Kevin, on a preview show, I said outright that the Bears would win this game. They played very good at home. And the Packers come out on top. And Hundley looked better. One of the things we did say was that I think he'd get better each week. So my biggest takeaway from this game, and I'm going to throw this over to Steve, is that it took 10 weeks. But after 10 weeks and everybody else being injured, Jamal Williams is now a starting running back in Green Bay. Steve, how about that?
That is correct. I mean, it was nice to see him get in there, but of course you're not happy that Aaron Jones got injured and that Ty Montgomery got injured after he had a really nice touchdown run, and Aaron Jones seemed to be getting off to a nice start. He only had 3 carries, but he looked pretty decent in those 3 carries, and so that's unfortunate.
How'd Jamal Williams look, Steve?
He is a bruiser, all right? He's not super flashy, and that is evidenced by his carry total and his average with his long run of 7 today. So nothing is going to really blow you away there, but he's a bruiser. He gets things done, and I'm excited to see if he's going to be the starting running back next week. I'm excited to see what that could mean and what that's going to look like. Because, yeah, we've been waiting a long time. I've got a lot of best ball teams that might benefit from this sudden appearance from him going forward. But, yeah, I'm happy to see it.
All right, Steve, Davante Adams has a nice game, 5 for 90 and a touchdown. Randall Cobb started off early looking like he was going to have a good game. He ended up finishing just 3 for 52. But here's Jordy Nelson, 3 for 20. This is about the third week in a row where he's been kind of unreliable. What are we doing going forward with Jordy Nelson?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I don't know if I would actually be able to sit Jordy Nelson because you know the type of player that he is, but it definitely seems like Brett Hundley favors Davante Adams. We saw when Aaron Rodgers initially got injured, Davante Adams also had a touchdown. So it does seem like he favors him quite a bit, but Jordy Nelson still is that type of player that can break a long one for a touchdown. He seems to get open quite often, but if he's not getting targets, you definitely have to start thinking about it. You have to look at the production for all the players. You can't just bench somebody. You can't just start somebody, keep going and expect something different if a trend is showing something else. This is not Aaron Rodgers under center for them anymore, but I think you still have to roll him out there for a couple more weeks and to see if things get better for him. I'm not ready to start putting him on my bench yet, but those who did it today and started someone maybe like a Robert Woods over him benefited greatly. So I can't fault those that do it. I just am a little more hesitant to do so.
Yeah, the question I got actually on Twitter today was Marquise Lee or Jordy Nelson. And I said, I'm going to go one more week with Jordy Nelson. So unfortunately, that wasn't the right choice today.
And you love Marquise Lee.
Yeah, but who would have thought that would be the case, right?
Yep.
So let's go over to the Bears side. And for those of you who are wondering, Kevin's having a little technical difficulties. He'll be joining us back in a second. Mitch Trubisky threw 35 passes today, Steve. 35,
wow.
Like a real adult, fully grown quarterback. And he probably had his best day, 297 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. But it wasn't enough to pull out the victory. Jordan Howard, 15 for 54. But what's very glaring in my box score is that Tariq Cohen got 1 carry for 1 yard and 1 reception for 10 yards. I know that Rob Schwartz, who writes occasionally for falafelhouse.com, good friend of the show, he's pissed off about this.
Yeah.
Can Tariq Cohen, going forward, is this a guy you could trust to have in your lineup on a weekly basis?
No, I don't think so. And it's weird that it happened in this game because the Bears were trailing for a large portion of it. So he should have been in there. For him to only have, a couple targets on top of everything, he should be there passing down back. He's not. I would agree with what Rob has been saying online. He's not being used. I guess you can't say incorrectly. He's just not being used enough. They aren't doing enough with him for him to only get 1 carry. I know he's not a huge, running back threat, but we've seen him do stuff in the backfield before. So he has earned more than 1 carry. They obviously decided to throw the ball a lot today, but very odd to see that. I don't think that you can start him with any confidence, but he does have that ability to break one. So I wouldn't be doing it. I'm not going to be having him ranked up there very high in terms of, is a flex player in a deep, deep league at best for me right now until you see his production go up more. Or in his usage more than his production.
Is there anybody else in this game? Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did have the 10 yards on that 1 catch. So, he's done well. When he's gotten more volume, he's done well. Is there anybody else in this game that I have not hit on that you would like to point out, sir?
Just real quick, it was nice to see Dontrell Inman get involved in this game. He had 6 receptions for 88 yards, so that was good to see. It's just, I don't know if it's going to be something that you can rely on every week. I'm not going to be putting him in my lineup because of this game next week. I think I'd want to see a little more consistency out of that before I do so. But it was good to see a wide receiver kind of emerge for the time being. But we've seen someone have 1 good game before and disappear the next. So I would just something to pay attention to.
Very good. I think Kevin is back with us, and we're going to move on to the Saints and the Bills. And the Saints travel way up north to Buffalo and wallop the Bills. Kevin, are you with us?
I think so. I think I'm with you.
Okay.
You are.
So, Kevin, when we spoke a lot lately about, is this the new norm in New Orleans? And sure enough, Drew Brees is 18 for 25 for 184 yards today. No passing touchdowns. Scores, which is probably the most reluctant rushing touchdown I've ever seen. Like, he did not want to run that ball, but just took forever. He finally just like, well, it's open. I'm going to go for it. And, that was one of 6 rushing touchdowns in this game. Guys who you love, both Ingram and Kamara, they go off, and even Michael Thomas got in there. So what do you think going forward about, is Drew Brees a guy you're going to play every week?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think there's no question about it. You absolutely have to. I mean, you're going to get games like this. I think going forward, this is the new norm, but he's still better than 90% of the quarterbacks in there, out there from a potential standpoint, right? He could literally at any point throw up 303, and you don't want to miss that game. And his quote unquote bad games haven't been that bad, right? So, I mean, this one was about the worst you're going to see. And at least he gets that 6 points from the rushing touchdown, albeit the most hesitant one of all time. I agree with you there. So this was bad. This is the worst game you're going to see out of him. So I think you absolutely have to roll him out every week. But, it was nice to see, in my mind in this game, it's nice to see Michael Thomas get 117 yards and nine receptions. I would really like to see him get in the end zone at some point this season, though.
Yeah, that would make everybody happy. And this is one of those games where we've spoken about this before. A quarterback doesn't necessarily have to have a good game for a wide receiver to have a good game. So only 184 passing yards for Brees, but 117 of them go to Michael Thomas. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Looking over at Buffalo. What happened to this team the last couple of weeks, Steve? This is a team going to last Thursday's game with the Jets, had an opportunity to control their own destiny. They've taken that destiny and they've crapped all over it.
That's
Tyrod
what
Taylor
Buffalo
gets.
does. That's what they do. I don't know why anyone misses
It's cold
this.
up there. It's very cold up there, Kevin. They got to go crap and things to keep it warm. But Tyrod Taylor gets pulled from this game. LaShawn McCoy doesn't perform great again for a second game in a row. Kelvin Benjamin makes his first appearance and, 3 catches, 42 yards. What is with the weapons in Buffalo, and who can you trust?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really trust anybody the way that they've been playing. Tyrod Taylor used to be, or he still is. I can't say used to be because of these last 2 weeks. He had a great 6 or 7 weeks before that. So he does only have 2.9 fantasy points today, which is just absolutely brutal. LaShawn McCoy is still somebody that you can trust. You don't ever bench LaShawn McCoy. He's just, they're in a rough patch right now. They're in a rough stretch. They, like you said, the last 2 games, they have not looked good at all. We talked about how good this New Orleans Saints defense seems to be right now, and man, they brought it to him today, and it's just bad. Charles Clay, his first game back, he didn't do much, but like you said, Tyrod Taylor got benched. This team was just not. They didn't bring it today. They were not into this game at all, and they got blown out. And yeah. Everyone's fantasy output suffered for it. You can trust LaShawn McCoy. Everybody other than that, they've got a very, very, very low floor. LaShawn McCoy, this is the worst you're going to see him do. Or the Thursday night game is the worst you're going to see him do. He did a little bit better than that tonight. But, yeah, he's it. LaShawn McCoy, that's all.
Can I just issue a public apology? Do we have a couple minutes for me to do that?
Is your wife listening? Go ahead.
No, she's not listening. But, I just want to say that anyone that was screwed over in this game by the fantasy outputs from either side, I think that it's my fault. I am playing against Mark Ingram in 7 leagues this week. Ouch. And conversely have LaShawn McCoy in many, many leagues as well. I don't even know how many leagues I have him in. I've got Tyrod Taylor in a few spots. All around, this is just a very difficult day for me. The only bright side was that I do have Kamara in a couple of places. But, man, yeah, seven different leagues I'm playing Mark Ingram. It was a tough day for me. LaShawn McCoy screwed me all over the place. Steve, I understand your frustration from last year. It's just building. It's getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Sorry. So anyone who was screwed over by this game, I apologize.
All right. Well, we're going to refer to you as the mush the rest of the episode. Don't be upset by that.
Look.
All right, let's move on.
I think I'm carrying myself better than Steve did last year. Let's be clear here.
We'll see. We got a few more weeks to see how
here you are. You're going back and attacking him. You apologize at the beginning of the show, and then you throw an offhanded smack across his face.
Well, he was miserable last year. You had to deal with it.
It's like, I'm really sorry, but when I get a chance, I'm taking another shot. All right, let's go over to a game that for a long period of time in this game looked like it was going to be an upset. The Cleveland Browns played really well early, but the Lions, when it came time to get this game in order and get the victory, they end up winning by 2 touchdowns. Let's go over to the Cleveland side first. Kevin, who had their best game of the year today for Cleveland?
I would have to say it's probably Isaiah Crowell. But
He looked good.
You could also say Deshaun Kaiser. You could say Seth DeValve. I mean, just about everyone on the team had their best day.
And guess who still plays in the NFL? Kenny Britt.
Kenny Britt does still play. And look, he was actually tracking the ball occasionally.
He had a touchdown today. So do you think that Isaiah Crowell could keep this up going forward?
No, don't come to me with Isaiah Crowell again. In my mind, he's on the bench. You're gonna, maybe you started him this week because there's a bye week. You needed a couple. There's 4 teams on bye and you needed something. I don't know. Maybe you got lucky and had him in there. But if you're me, you didn't have him in anywhere. You've probably tried to trade him at this point if you could. No, I can't trust him. 16 for 90 with a touchdown is great. He had a little bit. He had 1 catch as well, but. No, it's just never going to be consistent. They got up early in this game, and I think they tried to use him a little bit more in the beginning to make that happen. And then you saw his frustration right before the half when they couldn't get that they ran the wrong play or they couldn't get the play off, and then they couldn't spike the ball to give themselves a chance, and they basically squandered a red zone trip. You saw how pissed off he was. He comes out and has a 21-yard run after that, I think it was, and to start the second half. And then, you can't trust it. Sorry. You just can't trust it.
I hear you. And Duke Johnson has a nice day because he adds in 6 receptions for 34 yards to his 54 yards rushing. But to your point about Kaiser, who left for a brief period with an injury but came back, 232 yards passing and 1 passing touchdown, but 57 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown really bring his day up. Steve, going over to the Detroit side, Matthew Stafford,
yep.
he throws for 3 touchdowns, 249 yards. A guy who I had on the sink list this week, Amir Abdullah, gets back in the end zone, but still not enough touches going his way. Golden Tate has a nice game, and Marvin Jones disappears on us, Steve. What the hell?
Yeah, after the last couple of weeks that Marvin Jones had, I'm sure this outcome was not what everybody was expecting, but Golden Tate still did his normal thing. He has 6 catches. He does the breakaway for a touchdown. So he has a very solid day, which you kind of come to expect. Marvin Jones, we've seen this from him last year. He broke out the first couple of games of the season with huge games, and then he kind of vanished. So we know that he can do this from time to time. It probably just hurt a lot of people today, I'm sure. And then how can you throw this question?
Wait.
What?
I was just going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but he totally buried the lead here.
I know.
I was going to come with it. I was backdooring this sucker, but Steve didn't let it happen. So Kenny Galladay, right? No, I kid. Eric Ebron, who I picked back up in Falafel and started today because Jordan Reed again was not playing. He caught it was actually a beautiful touchdown reception. It was very nice. Steve, Eric Ebron's back, right?
No, don't do it. Don't be suckered in by this again. Just let it go. He had 3 targets today. He caught 2 of them. He was pretty wide open on that touchdown. It was a nice pass from Matthew Stafford. But no, don't go chasing the touchdowns from Eric Ebron. We know that is not the norm from him. You take that away, 2 catches for 39 yards, nothing. Terrible. Don't do it. You got lucky, Sal.
Well, the correct answer from your side should have been when I said he's back. Should have been when he had to have been here first in order to come back. He hasn't gotten here yet. So Theo Riddick gets just 3 catches for 12 yards, but he gets a touchdown and salvage his day. But I did bring up Kenny Galladay, and Steve, you were on Thursday night, and Kevin brought him up to me, and he asked me if this is a guy you're getting back in the lineup. Again, he has 2 receptions, but he has big total yardage of 64 to those 2 receptions, and TJ Jones only gets the 1 for 22. How do you think this is going forward, Steve? Are either one of those guys going to be usable, or is this just Marvin Jones and Golden Tate?
I think in a deeper league as a flex play, you can do worse than Kenny Galladay. I think he's kind of like a Will Fuller type of player where he's going to have these big, not a lot of catches, but when he does catch, it's going to be for big yardage. We saw what he could do at the very beginning of the season with his, big games and the touchdowns and multiple touchdowns, all that stuff. So we know he's got that big playability. The Lions are a team that throw the ball quite often. Matthew Stafford's pretty good, whatever that word is. And
Gets paid a lot.
Yeah, that is. Hey, don't be jealous. Don't be jealous of Matthew Stafford.
Hey, listen. One thing with Golladay, Sal, that we didn't look at when we were talking about him earlier in the week is their matchups for the rest of the fantasy season is kind of brutal when you're talking about passing game. They play Chicago, who we already mentioned, or at least I mentioned. I think they have a better secondary than they get credit for. Then Minnesota and Baltimore. They do have a nice one against Tampa Bay, the first round of the playoffs, but then they're back to Chicago and Cincinnati. So those are defenses that are shutting down the passing game pretty well this season, with the exception of Tampa Bay. So I think you're right about Golladay. I don't know if you're going to be starting him too much. Maybe a spot start here or there if you need it.
All right. Is there anybody in this game that we did not hit on?
Nope, you hit on everybody.
Well, I get around.
Hey-o.
We know.
Hey, let's go over to this game, and it's the Titans and the Bengals. Titans win this one 24-20. Does anybody realize the Titans are 6-3? Like, this is the most 6-3-ish type of season I've ever the team have. They just don't seem good to me. But somehow they've managed to get 3 games above 500, and they definitely come back with the old 1-2 screw punch today with Henry and Murray. Henry gets more yardage on the ground, but Murray ends up with 3 total touchdowns, just screwing all of us over. Mariota has a nice day, and if you put into 51 yards rushing, which is really, really good. But who the hell do we use in a receiving game? Is there anybody to use in a receiving game, Steve, other than Delaney Walker?
Not anybody that you can trust, other than I think Rashard Matthews has kind of earned his way up there. He seems pretty consistent. He had 5 catches for 50 yards today. He seems to be their primary receiver. So I think you can roll out there with some regularity and feel okay about that. But other than that, no, you're going to kind of have to wait and see. Corey Davis is somebody that I think that should be owned in all leagues and thrown on your bench as he comes back and gets more acquainted with the offense after his long layoff with the injury. I think that he could definitely be somebody that emerges as their big play guy. But until that happens, no, you're going to have Delaney Walker and Rashard Matthews. Those are the guys you're trusting. But for me, for this game, what I like to see the most was the rushing that you mentioned from Marcus Mariota. We know he'd missed that game with a hamstring injury, and then on that Monday night game against the Colts, he looked really bad. And today he didn't seem to have any hesitation running out of the pocket. He looked good while he was running, so it was good to see that aspect of his game you can start to rely on more from week to week going forward. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, for me, every week that goes by, Eric Decker moves closer and closer to becoming Mr. Jesse James Decker, as this is, I don't know if he's going to play beyond this year. So, Kevin, over on the Cincinnati side, Joe Mixon continues to get the lead carries, which are just not enough. And he gets a touchdown, which great, saves his day, 1 reception, but there is nothing coming out of the running game or the running backs in this offense at all. Jeremy Hill was put on the IR. I didn't even know that until I saw in some of my lineups, he's on my roster that he was on the IR. I didn't even see an announcement about that. And
you didn't see in the chat, our old friend Peachy came out and said that it's Mixon time because Hill was on the IR, and I immediately attacked him because that has no bearing on Joe Mixon at this point.
Yeah, I did. I definitely missed that. I guess I had a busy week and I didn't see that in the chat. But yeah, there's nothing to get excited about with Mixon. I would really like to, and I keep him on my team, but I think I keep him on my bench. Very surprising early that Brandon LaFell just looked like, he knew how to play football and catch a ball. 6 for 95 and a touchdown. But there was another guy who you thought should have been suspended this week, Kevin, that had a monster touchdown catch. AJ Green came back and did what he normally does. And that's why you play him every week.
Yeah, you can't take AJ Green out of your lineup, despite the fact that he's had a few real stinkers this week or this year, and last week he had the. It was a nice takedown, right? I mean, he probably scored some nice MMA points, but at the end of the day, he definitely should have been suspended because we saw what happened with Mike Evans. I think what Mike Evans did was a lot. While it was a cheap shot, it was still less aggressive than what AJ Green did. So whatever. This is exactly what he does. This is exactly why you don't get him out of the lineup. I think Brandon LaFell gets a bad rap because, he's so up and down, but he's a guy that's always around, and he does play. He has flashes from time to time. He's not ever a guy that you're going to get in your lineup on a regular basis, but he's definitely a guy I've had on rosters and used in spot starts, and it always turns out okay. So, yeah, you can't trust him. And the running game, I think you're exactly right. I would love, I'm not a big Joe Mixon fan, but as a guy that was highly touted coming into the league, you expected more out of him, and you'd love to see a guy like that actually make something of himself. But this offensive line, we've talked about it 100 times, is just so bad. I think you have to hope that in the offseason, if you still have this guy, if you're playing in dynasty formats or whatever, you have to hope that they address that offensive line heavily and bring back some of the, replace some of the guys that they let go and, really shore that up to make them better, because this offense looks terrible without any semblance of a running game.
Yeah, and they should do that all with Marvin Lewis being fired first.
Agreed.
Let's move on to the craptacular game of the day, the New York Jets against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Next.
I thought the Jets would win this game. There really is legitimately nothing to talk about in this game other than Robbie Anderson scores a receiving touchdown for the fourth straight game. Kevin, we discussed this the other night as there was a trade in one of our leagues that involved him and Alfred Morris, and we weren't sure if he was a guy we would start every week yet. How do you feel now after this game?
I still feel the same. He's not, I just don't like it. I think if he's on your roster,
I think he's flex-worthy. He's a flex-worthy wide receiver.
Yeah, maybe he's creeping. Maybe he's creeping towards that realm. But he's never going to be a guy that I feel comfortable starting. He's never going to be a guy that I have in there and I'm like, yeah, this guy's going to get me a lot of points this week. I know it.
Woo! I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's to say, he entices no excitement for me.
And talk about no excitement. That's how anybody who started Bilal Powell today felt. This was a matchup of all matchups. He was on the swim list in 3 out of the last 4 games. The Bucs have given up 25 plus fantasy points to an individual running back in PPR, and he crapped the bed. He didn't even get really a lot of touches in this game. I thought he'd get a lot more touches than that, and that's it from that offense. Over on the Tampa Bay side, Steve.
Hey, listen, when you have Josh McCown, you let him throw it. That's just a fact. You don't run the ball. You just let McCown air it out.
I think that's been proven this season. Absolutely. Over on the Buccaneers side, you probably shouldn't have been starting anybody in this offense today because with Winston not healthy, Fitzpatrick playing, Martin has been so bad lately. Evans is suspended. Was there anybody worthwhile starting this game? And then I look down and I say, maybe it's Steve's guy, Cameron Brate. But what happened, Steve?
I have no idea what happened. He just got no play at all today. He had 1 catch early on for the 10 yards, and that's what he ended with. He only ended the game with 3 targets, just not the type of usage that we are used to seeing when Jameis Winston is typically under center. But, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he just didn't go to him. It hurt me so bad. I had Cameron Brate in a lot of places today. So I was surprised to see it more than anything. And it wasn't like O.J. Howard was taking all of those targets away from him either. He didn't get one. So, it was just a rough day for Cameron Brate. But Chris Godwin and Deshaun Jackson both turned in some pretty solid days. I agree. With Ryan Fitzpatrick under center, I don't really feel comfortable starting a lot of these guys. When Mike Evans comes back, you're going to start him no matter what. But Cameron Brate definitely makes me worry about his outlook going forward.
Sal, I bring this up only because I'm a bitter, angry.
The highest scoring player today was their defense.
Ugh. Next.
Wasn't Deshaun Jackson on the old swim list?
He was on the swim list. Yes.
Okay. Just throwing it out there. I mean, he had a good day, 6 for 82. It's not like he had a bad
6
day.
for 82. If he could have added the touchdown, obviously that would have sealed the deal. But
I only bring it up because you said there was no one startable. That's all. And yet,
they can't all be swimmers, Kevin.
Fair enough.
We got to move on.
Let's move over to the game that I actually watched today, which I don't know what the reason is. To that later. Pulling out a late victory against the Colts. It looked like the Colts had this game all the way. I mean, the Steelers played atrocious early in this game, missed a ton of opportunities, and gave up big play after big play. The tackling on that Pittsburgh defense is terrible. At 7-2, if they think they're going to go deep in the playoffs, they're going to need to learn how to tackle somebody. So why don't we start with the Pittsburgh side? Kevin, Juju Smith-Schuster, is he now better than Antonio Brown?
Yeah. Yeah. 5 for 97 with a touchdown is definitely a good day for him. He's looked really good when he's on the field. But I don't think there's anyone in the world who thinks he's better than Antonio Brown. And if there is, they should stop watching football because they just don't know anything. He looks good. He's definitely moved ahead of Martavis Bryant in the pecking order. I mean, there's no question about that. He's targeted 7 times in this one. Bryant only 5, which isn't a huge difference. But at the end of the day, you can tell that Ben Roethlisberger has trust in Smith-Schuster and looks to get him the ball. The catch and run on the touchdown was really nice. He's just overall just a great young player, and you like to see that. So a good compliment to Antonio Brown. Unfortunately for us fantasy owners, he's taking the pressure off of Antonio Brown, and you're seeing Brown only get 7 targets. When I say only, but for him that's low, right? We're used to seeing Brown with those 10, 11, 12 target games, and you just don't need that as much anymore.
No, Brown had 2 receptions for 15 yards pretty much this entire game until a big late reception that brought that up. But he was missed once by Ben on a sideline. It was a bad pass. And then there was one that went right off of his hands. That was really very uncharacteristic of him. That could have been a walk touchdown. He was very close to the end zone when that happened. But I'll say this about Martavis Bryant. He probably had the biggest reception of the game on the game-winning drive that led to the field goal. It was a big play, and he also had a big 2-point conversion to get the game tied at 17. So he was involved. They did give an end around to him. It was a brutally bad play that blew up in their face, but we'll have to see going forward. Right now, he's still on my bench as well. Steve, over on the other side.
Yep.
Chester Rogers is a thing. Yeah. This guy played good.
Yeah, he had a good game, and he is somebody that was talked about a lot on the Colts heading into the season, and then he got sidelined with a hamstring injury, I believe it was, for a long time, or it was an ankle or something to do with his leg. But, he had a really good game today. He was the only receiver or pass catcher to have more than 2 catches. He has 6 for 104 and a touchdown. Kevin's man crush Dante Moncrief has one huge catch for 60 yards and a touchdown, so it was nice to see him get into the end zone. But that was his only target of the day. T.Y. Hilton fell back to earth after his huge week last week, but I think that's just what you're going to get with Jacoby Brissett. You're not going to get the same thing every week. He's not going to be targeting the same people. Jack Doyle, he had 5 targets, but only ends up getting 2 catches for 9 yards, so not what you were wanting to get out of him. Kind of odd that no one really, you had those 2 guys that I'm sure nobody started. Brissett didn't have a great day, only completed 14 passes. It was for them to have the lead and for nobody really have a huge breakout game that really mattered is kind of weird, but that is how football is these days. It's very angering.
I want to ask you both a question here. Marlon Mack, 7 carries, 7 yards. What are your thoughts there? Are you guys still on the Mack bandwagon?
I think that I still want to have him on my roster, and I want to wait to see what direction the Colts go in here now that they are going to be basically dropping out of contention. Andrew Luck is obviously on the IR, not coming back. And are we going to continue to go to Gore, who so much respect and love for Frank Gore and what he's done for all these years, but he's not the future. So I'm holding on to him because I think he's the type of guy who can start to be used more as we head into the fantasy playoffs.
All right, and just so you guys know, I actually benched Moncrief in most of my leagues this week. So,
as you should have.
Awesome.
Sal, would you like to continue on?
Sure. Why not? Let's get to the game that had my biggest mistake of the year, and that's the Vikings putting up 38 on the Redskins, who only managed to put up 30. And, of course, coming into this game, the Redskins have defended the pass well, specifically wide receivers. So, of course, Case Keenum, who's about to lose job to Teddy Bridgewater, passes for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Thielen gets in on the action with 8 for 166 in the touchdown. Diggs, 4 for 78 and a touchdown. And Rudolph, who we expect to have a big day, 5 for 37, and the other tight end ends up getting a touchdown and not him, Morgan. Steve, I think the surprise here was all the touches that Latavius Murray got over Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, I would like to hear if there was a certain reason for that. But yeah, he had 7 more carries than him. He gained much more yardage than him, and he got the touchdown, like you said. So it was very surprising. Those of you who had to use him on your Scott Fishbowl team today, like myself, were pleasantly surprised. But we've seen Jerick McKinnon before the last few weeks. He's been done very well. I don't think that you automatically assume that this job has switched hands. I would be starting Jerick McKinnon over Latavius Murray next week, but it just gives you a little hope. If you picked him up when Dalvin Cook originally got hurt, then you start thinking that maybe he becomes a flex play over these last couple bye weeks maybe, and just see what happens going forward. It was good to see him get back on track and get some work, but I'm sure Jerick McKinnon owners are not very happy about that.
Kevin, a lot of interesting things over on the Washington side. Jordan Reed out again, so Vernon Davis continues to play like a tight end 1. 7 for 76 is a big day for a tight end. And, there's been some injuries and some stuff going on at the wide receiver core. So, we figure maybe Terrell Pryor will finally step up. He's getting an opportunity, right? 0 targets, and Maurice has the best touchdown reception of the day. Who the hell is Maurice Harris?
I have no idea who that is. And it's interesting.
They signed him off the practice squad this week.
Yeah, it's also interesting to me that we're now hearing the rumors that they were trying to trade Terrell Pryor back to the Cleveland Browns at the trade deadline, which is interesting to me. I don't know that he would really be doing anything in Cleveland either. So fantasy-wise, I'm not sure that's where you want him to go. But this has just been a mess of a year for Pryor. It just hasn't worked out the way people were expecting. A lot of people were really high on him. They thought at minimum he'd take over the Deshaun Jackson role, and it just zero targets is embarrassing. That's a terrible day for him. Hopefully no one had him in their starting lineup except me. I'm hopeful that everyone else took him out, but that's the type of season it is. So occasionally, things just don't work out. And, Cousins didn't really have a great day in this one. He gets the 2 rushing touchdowns, which make it seem like a really, really good day. But those were both sneaks. So I don't know how often you're going to count on him getting 2 rushing touchdowns. So for me, I think I focused on the fact that he still wasn't really that great. Throw for 300 yards, but 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And he wasn't the most efficient passer out there. So overall, that would be 2 weeks in a row that if you take away those rushing touchdowns, it would have been a rough day.
Against Seattle and Minnesota.
Yep. Agreed.
Luckily for Steve that he got those rushing touchdowns.
Yep, they count. I'll take them. I love it.
Steve's probably going to win as a result of it. So, hey, let's take a look at the running backs on this team. So Rob Kelly gets hurt again. He's seen in an air cast and on crutches again. So Samaje Perine gets 9 carries for 35 yards. He gets 1 reception for 25 yards. And Chris Thompson, who was really carried teams that took the shot on him earlier in the season, starting to look more like the Chris Thompson of years past, which is he'll have a 3 for 41 receiving, but he just is not that RB1 that you were getting from early in the year. So, Kevin, going forward, who are you going to start on a weekly basis as far as running backs go in his team? Is there anybody that you feel comfortable starting?
Probably not. I mean, you're probably going to start Chris Thompson because the potential for, in the passing game, he's not going to do much more than the 9 for 26 he got on the ground. I think that's about it for him. But 3 for 41 in the air is a light day for him. So I think he's definitely flex worthy, RB2 on some days, depending on the matchup type of guy. You can get him in your lineup, but Perine, Kelly, if he does get healthy, I don't think you could trust these guys to roll them out there. There's just not the volume, and there's just not the production coming when they do get some carries. So I'm not trusting any of them. I think it's we'll see what Perine does next year, but I think it's a position they should probably look to address in the offseason as well. I think they might need some more help there.
Okay, well, let me tell you where I had Chris Thompson everywhere this year. In all of my lineups and all of my best balls on draft, I had Chris Thompson, and he carried my teams early on, and I got some nice leads that I'm trying to hold on to now. Steve,
what?
Who was the guy that has been carrying your best ball lineups that you did on draft this year?
I would have to probably say Carlos Hyde is one of those guys. He is somebody that we were able to draft in the later rounds that has been pretty solid. We'll get to that game later. He had another solid game today. So yeah, especially with all the injuries that have happened to everybody else, someone who's been knocked for injuries on his own. He's been active every week. He's not necessarily putting up RB1 numbers every week, but for the most part, he's been pretty good. So I think Carlos Hyde, getting him in the rounds that I got him, have been a big help to my best ball teams. I got to check those out right now and see how I'm doing, actually. Last week was pretty good. I had a bump up in my my profits, Kevin.
That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that you had a bump up in your profits. And you know that I've been monitoring those closely to make sure that you're still on the plus side. Sal, to answer your question, not that you asked me, I think Todd Gurley's been the guy that has really been carrying a lot of my teams that I'm doing well in. He's been a guy that's obviously put up phenomenal numbers and wasn't a first-round pick in a couple of the places because people, if you remember correctly, when we were doing a lot of them during the summer, people were a little bit down on him. So he's definitely been the guy. But you know what I love about the draft app is, not to mention the fact that we're following these best balls that we did all summer long that kept us entertained while there was, even before training camp started. But every single week you get to put together a new lineup. You get to draft a new team. You get to draft in a different format, whether it's the head to head, or it's a bracket tournament, or it's a just a general league of any size, any denomination of entry fee. All of that, you can set it up however you want, and you can just change it every week, which is great. You can do multiple just to offset. A guy like me who's having such a horrible fantasy season in so many leagues, this is just one of the best things of my week, is that I get to at least start something new every week.
Yeah, especially when if you didn't do really well in those best balls that you drafted and guys got injured and guys just aren't playing. Aaron Rodgers is out. I mean, David Johnson, so many guys. You jump on it every week. You draft a new lineup. There's so many different ways to play. Download the app now. Go to playdraft.com/falafel, FLAFFL. Deposit $10 or more, and they will get you a free entry into a weekly contest. Let's jump in to the game that involves Todd Gurley, who Kevin said was the guy who's probably carrying his best ball teams. And the Rams, this team is friggin' for real, man. 7-2, they're averaging the most points in the league. They put up 33 points again today. Steve, is Jared Goff a weekly quarterback one?
A quarterback one, I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if I'm ready to go there yet. He's had 2 great weeks in a row, 2 quarterback one weeks for sure. And I absolutely love that he has turned everything around this season. But the defenses that he was going up against, he was the Giants last week and the Houston Texans secondary this week, and they're not the best in the league. So I would hold fast, just not so quick. I was playing up against somebody that I was happy that he had Carson Wentz on his bye week, and of course then he picks up Jared Goff, and and then this happens. So. He's looked good. He's looked great. And I think he's right on the fringe, honestly. I think he's right there. But I think he is somebody that you plug and play matchups with. But just another couple of weeks, if this is how the Rams are going to run their offense each and every week with him throwing the ball 37 times while they're up. I mean, they were never down in this game. Very early, I think they were. But once they took the lead, they scored 21 points in the third quarter. They put their foot down, and they keep going. So... that's fun to see from a fantasy standpoint. I think he's right there. I think he's right on the fringe.
Robert Woods has a huge game, 8 for 171 and 2. Absolutely buries me in the main falafel league. That's the biggest one. It's going to put me down with like a 33-point total for him. Watkins, for the second week in a row, scores a touchdown. So he's re-entered the possibility of being in your lineup on a weekly basis. Kevin, over on the Houston side, Tom Savage sucks. And the offense does not look good as a result of it. But, again, bad game by a quarterback, still a solid by a wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins, 7 for 111, still looks good. But Will Fuller leaves after taking a big shot, and he might be down. So is Ellington, a guy who caught a touchdown today, 4 for 41, a touchdown, is that a guy you're looking to add if Fuller is going to miss some time?
I think at this point in the season, you the waiver wire is probably getting to the thin point. If you're in contention and you're really still scouring the waiver wire, or if you're trying to get in contention and you're looking at the waiver wire, a guy like Bruce Ellington's a guy you might look at, but I don't know that you're going to trust him too much going forward because, as you said, in this offense with Tom Savage as such a terrible quarterback, I don't understand. I don't think you can get Bruce Ellington in your lineup and expect a touchdown, 4 for 41. We did see some good games from him early in the season when Fuller was out as well, so maybe there's more there. He had 8 targets, but at the end of the day, we know that when Savage gets just about any situation, he's going to look at Hopkins. Another 14 targets for Hopkins. He's going to break. I don't know what the record is for targets, but he's got to break it this year because it's just embarrassing when Savage is on the field. How often he looks in DeAndre Hopkins' direction. I mean, I get it. He's a great receiver and all, and he's 7 for 111 was fantastic. Would have liked to see a touchdown, but at the end of the day, you got to change it up. If you keep throwing to the guy, they're going to know.
Yeah. Other than that, not much else went on this offense today. Lamar Miller, 11 for 60, and he adds in 1 reception for 14. And then C.J. Fedorowicz, our friend Fancy Hot, he returned today, 2 for 10. Somebody maybe he's on your radar. You'll look at him going forward, but that's pretty much it.
Fancy Hot?
Fancy
hot?
Fancy hat.
It's my bloody accent, man.
It sounded like you said fancy hot. It's like, wow, that's
hot. He's
weird.
on fire. And speaking of hot, the Jacksonville Jaguars also moved to 3 to match Tennessee in that division, and they won 20-17 today in overtime against the Los Angeles Chargers. Looking over at Jacksonville, this wasn't the game we thought Leonard Fournette was going to have, Kevin. We spoke about this the other night. We thought that they would run the ball, and he could see upwards of 30 touches, 17 for 33. And the biggest play in the game was the running back Grant on a fake punt going 56 yards for a touchdown. Do you now feel, and we discussed this the other night about Marquise Lee, do you now like Marquise Lee is approaching a guy who you could count on a weekly basis, Kevin?
Yes, I guess so. 11 targets, 6 catches, 55, and a touchdown. Yeah, I guess so. He's definitely flex worthy. I'm not even going to try to argue that. I guess. Again, he's another one of those guys though. He's the Robbie Anderson type that I'm just not excited about. Particularly, this one boils down to the quarterback for me because I don't necessarily have anything against Lee. I think Marquise Lee is a good receiver and should get more volume and more looks. Allen Hurns is also a decent receiver. Allen Robinson was a very good receiver when he was playing. Blake Bortles is terrible. He will always be terrible. He should not be an NFL quarterback. And
stop that Bortleism on my show.
Listen, I'm just telling you, he's just so bad. He just makes you not want to like his wide receivers, which is awful.
Well, let's go over to the other side where no wide receiver had a good game today, and that's normal because Jacksonville shuts down wide receivers, period. But there was someone who had a really good day receiving, and of course that was the running back Melvin Oh, no. It was Austin Ekeler. Ekeler.
Oh, my God.
Steve. Austin Ekeler. Twinkle Toes. Did you see him twinkle toes down the sideline and stay in bounds for a touchdown? He caught 2 receiving touchdowns on 5 receptions for 77 yards. He added 10 for 42 on the ground, and he was actually getting more touches than Gordon late in the game until he fumbled, a costly fumble that Bortles promptly turned back over on an interception, so it didn't end up hurting the Chargers at that point. But is Austin Ekeler a guy you think you can add who possibly have standalone value on a weekly basis?
I think he's definitely somebody that needs to be added. I would not be starting him weekly, although, he had 16 or 15 touches today, and Melvin Gordon had 21. So that is a split that, as a Melvin Gordon owner, you do not want to see that. Melvin Gordon, a lot of his value has always come from his volume and what he's been able to do with that. And Austin Ekeler is definitely taking a huge chunk of that. And if he keeps producing with the way that he did today, which I don't think is very sustainable from the receiving standpoint, he's going to continue to do that. So it's definitely someone that needs to be added. I would not be starting him at all right now. But if something were to happen to Melvin Gordon, it looks like he is somebody that might be able to step in and be pretty useful. So I think he needs to be picked up everywhere.
Okay, this really was nothing else on that side of the offense. I mean, Philip Rivers has an okay day considering the defense he was going against, but he was not recommended to be started in most places. So most likely you did not have him in there today. Moving over to the Cowboys and the Falcons. Zeke was out. Finally, it happened, and it was true. But I thought that the Cowboys would still play better. So the Falcons came on, and they won this game 27-7. And here's the interesting thing. Let's go to the Dallas side. Who was going to be the lead running back today? And we talked about this before we got on the air, Steve. And you said maybe it's because the Cowboys were getting their asses kicked through most of this game. But Rod Smith got 39 snaps today. Alfred Morris got 21. And Darren McFadden got 1. So I want both of your guys' opinions. Is Darren McFadden worth owning right now? There was a lot of talk about, well, wait and see. Is possibly he's the real backup. He got 1 snap today. Do you want to add Rod Smith? And is that the guy going forward you think is going to carry the load? We'll start with him.
I think for me, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I think you need to add Rod Smith. I put him in the waiver column that I write for dynastytradecalculator.com. Because he's a guy that I think when going forward without Elliott, I think that they're going to try to focus the game around Dak Prescott more. You saw he got 30 passing attempts. He was rushing the ball a little bit more. He ran the ball 6 times. So I think they're going to try to focus more on Dak Prescott and you used as Bryant more and those kind of things because those are your playmakers. Well, if that's true, if they're in more passing situations, you're going to see Rod Smith on the field more. So that means that he's going to be there. So I think that you could probably add him. I don't know that I'm trusting much because you saw what he did with all that action, right? He had three rushes for 14 yards and 4 catches for 15 yards. So a total of 29 yards isn't really instilling a lot of confidence in me going forward, but I think you do need to add him.
I would agree with that. I agree with that assessment. I like Rod Smith as a stash. Alfred Morris, of course, he carried him 3-11, so he definitely got the majority of the carries. So I think Alfred Morris is a guy that you're going to be rolling out there for right now, but Rod Smith definitely is going to get a look, and if he starts producing with the opportunities that he gets, he could easily take over that backfield.
And as far as the receiving game goes, the best player for the Cowboys today was Jason Witten. This guy seemingly doesn't age. 7 for 59, and then the wide receivers, both who had big games a week ago, Bryant and Williams, do basically nothing. So let's go over to the Atlanta side, and again, Devonta Freeman gets injured. It's another concussion. He had this either last season or 2 seasons ago. He had one of these concussions, and I'll be interested to see what it looks like going forward. Tevin Coleman, who we all say all the time, if he could get more touches, could be probably running back 1 in this league. 20 for 83 and a touchdown. He adds 1 reception for 5 yards. Kevin, if Freeman is going to miss significant time or even a couple weeks, is Coleman a guy you feel can step right in and be a weekly RB1?
Yeah, it's close for me as far as RB1, probably a back-end RB1, but I do think he's a guy, if he's going to get all the volume, I think you need to get him in your lineup. He's definitely going to start for you every week because 20 for 83 and a touchdown, I think, is probably pretty close to what you can expect in most days, and that's a pretty solid day for any running back. So, yeah, I think you got to get him in there if going forward if you have him.
Your boy Hooper showed up today with a touchdown.
Damn right he did. 6 for 49.
6 for 49. Yeah, he looked good, and they were going to him off. I mean, 6 receptions for him. That's a very big game for him. He's usually a 1 to 2 and possibly 3 guy. So that was nice to see. And then that comes at the
6 for 49 and the touchdowns, basically tight end, top 5 for tight end in most weeks. So it's a solid game.
He's a tight end 3 this week so far without the 2 games left. So yeah,
basically that comes at the expense of Julio Jones, who has another wonderful day of 6 for 57, and becomes more and more disappointing. It's like they don't want to use him. It's crazy. And Gabriel has a decent day, 3 for He ends up with one more yard than Julio, and he has a nice carry, 1 for 15. He's a guy who I had to plug in because it was a pretty brutal week for me with bye weeks all over the place. Is there anything else from this game or from this Falcons offense that got you guys excited?
Not excited necessarily, but I think it's interesting to note Mohamed Sanu has a down game after having a couple of games, a few games in a row there where he was pretty successful. He probably screwed a lot of people. I bring that up because I like to share in everyone's misery.
You are pretty miserable.
You're a good man like that. You really
No,
are.
it's just the real reason I bring him up is because I think he's a guy that you have to take with a grain of salt, and I don't know that he's an every week start. And I think people were starting to think he might be. So.
All right, let's wrap this show up with two of the just absolutely wonderful teams in the NFL, the New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. I rely on the swim. I had Arlene Stalker on the swim. I said if there was ever a week to start your Giants, this would be the week because the Giants, while having a bad season, are just a better team than the 49ers with better players. And they lost. And they lost by 10, and they only lost by 10 because they scored a late garbage time touchdown. The 49ers control this game. Steve.
Yes.
Is there anybody you like on the Giants side of the ball at all? And I know there is.
Yeah. Thanks. You're just
Come on,
lobbing
asking
this
you.
one up to me, aren't you? Sterling Shepard, I'm a big fan of. You may have heard, if you've ever heard this
Never heard of
podcast before.
Never heard of him at all.
He
No.
had a huge day today, 11 receptions, 142 yards, just a couple beautiful catches. So with all the injuries that have happened to their wide receivers so far this year, you'd expect him to pick up a lot of that slack. We haven't seen an outburst from him so far like this, so this was good to see. It would have been great if he could have gotten to the end zone, really put the cherry on top of that. But yeah, him and Evan Ingram, who also got 9 targets. He had 6 catches for 31 yards, and he did get a touchdown. Those are two guys that I think you can rely on because this defense is terrible, and they are going to be behind a lot, and they are going to throw the ball a lot. Eli Manning, he doesn't have a ton of yards for just 28 completions and 37 attempts, but he does throw the 2 touchdowns. They are going to throw the ball. And Orleans Darkwa, he's somebody that you can maybe flex in from time to time once these bye weeks get done based on the matchup. But like I just said, their defense is so bad, I don't see them having a lot of positive game scripts for him in the future. So, yeah, those would be the two guys, Shepard and Ingram. I would feel comfortable rolling out there every week. Everyone else is definitely matchup dependent.
Well, we jump over onto the 49ers side, and Kevin, Steve brought up Carlos Hyde when we were talking about the draft app, and he goes over 100 total yards, no touchdown. Breda gets that touchdown, 9 for 55. C.J. Beathard, because I got to say his name this week.
Yeah.
He has a pretty good game, 288, 2 touchdowns, and he adds a rushing touchdown. Kevin, were you smart enough to pick up Garrett Selleck and start him anywhere against the league's worst tight end defense?
No, sir. No, I was not. I should have been because you've been talking about the Giants and how bad they are with against the tight ends for quite some time now. But I just don't like listening to you. And apparently even furthermore, I don't like winning in fantasy this year. So that's part of the reason that I didn't do it either. No, he had a great game. This defense, you're right, because it's Garrett Selleck. So Sal, I will give you all the credit in the world. Excellent calls on how bad the Giants defense are against tight ends, because Garrett Selleck is not really a talented player, nor is C.J. Beathard. This team is absolutely dreadful. I cannot believe that the Giants are now the worst team in the league. And yes, I think that they might lose to the Browns if they were to play them.
Wow.
I know. How can the coach survive this week? Like, how can he actually came out and said, I think he wants to get fired at this point. He's made a statement in a press conference that we were out coached today. Well, no kidding. We watched the game. But
there's no question he should be fired.
Yeah.
He's got to be fired now. This isn't
Yes.
something that's got to wait till the end of the season. Put Spagnuolo in there. He's an experienced head coach, not a very good one, but let him finish out the season, and maybe something sparks there, and then you clean in house. And maybe Jerry Reese needs to go before next season, but maybe you let him go now too. It's just time. He's lost the locker room. It's pathetic. That team has a lot of high-priced, good quality football players on it who have given up. And we've talked about this. We've talked about it on the show. I've talked about it in my column, that this team is quitting. And Janoris Jenkins, who's a top flight NFL player, he's quit on his team. He got burned bad by Marquise Goodwin in this game for an 83-yard touchdown. That doesn't happen when that guy's on top of his game. So, going forward, I don't know that either one of these teams will win any more games, but at least San Francisco got to play the Giants and got that one win. So, is there anything else from this game, this pathetic group of teams that have a total of 2 wins now after playing each other, that you guys want to point out?
Nope.
Steve, finish it up.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at Falafel House. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Falafel House there. And, of course, falafelhouse.com, where you can find Sal's Sink or Swim, which was mentioned multiple times on this podcast, and all kinds of other good content. So go and check all of that out. Sal, on to you.
I am nothing without self-promotion. So thank you guys. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And by all means, always check out Steve. And he does this gambling or betting article, Bettor's Corner.
Yeah, you guys don't
with,
have to look at that.
Our good friend on Mayer. I don't know what the hell, how you say that. Anyway, he's a hippie. That's it, Kevin. Damn hippies.
Thanks, guys. I just want to remind everyone that we do like reviews. So if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a nice review, or even a review telling us how bad Steve is, or how right Sal is, whatever you want to say, we would appreciate it. It would be very helpful. Even if you want to give us some bad feedback, that'd be okay too. We just like the reviews. So get over there and do that. And then
that's okay.
Oh, well, I meant it's okay, but Sal will still track you down.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and remember to add some charity to your fantasy football experience. It will make it better for you, I promise. FantasyCares.net will probably be up and running again within a couple of months. So keep that site in mind and go in there and check it out. That's it for us. We will be back on Tuesday night, I believe. And until then, Steve, hit the button.